77% of that 20% gain is going to be made right in here. Now, what does that tell us, folks? You can't wait until the market gets here or here or here, and certainly not here, before you invest. You have to be getting into the market when, as I said earlier, it's villainized. This market's terrible. It's going to go on forever in a downturn. We're going to be in a recession for the rest of our lives. That's when you've got to look at getting into the market. So I'm going to tell you something very bold. You know when to get in the market? Right now. Right now. Well, Steve, what if it's over here? What if we still have some downturn? It doesn't matter. That makes no difference, because eventually this market will cycle through and 77% of your returns will be made in this area right here. You've got to navigate, folks. You've got to know where and when to put your money. And then, as I said in the first segment, you've got to leave it there and let it do its work. Now, I have a couple of more very interesting historical points that I'm going to share with you. But before we do that, we're going to take a break from this and we're going to move over to one of my favorite segments, and that is rapid fire. Get your seatbelts on. Let's go.
It's time for your outspoken emails to be heard. This is Rapid Fire.
All right, folks, it's time now for Rapid Fire. That's where I take your emails from my fantastic viewers, read them on the show, and answer them. And I have 30 seconds to do it, so let's get started. Dear Steve, what is a beneficiary deed? One of my coworkers told me about this, but would like to hear from you what it is and how to get one. Sincerely, Robert B. from Little Rock. Hit the clock. Robert, great question. This is a way to put your house in essence, a trust-like environment without having to pay the expense of a trust. You simply go down to the county clerk's office and you get a beneficiary deed and you fill it out. I think you pay about $25 and you give the beneficiaries to your house. It'll never see probate. It'll never have any sticky attorney fingers getting to it. It goes straight to your heirs. As a matter of fact, I believe we have that on our website, youmeandwallstreet.com. So go there and get you a copy of that. Good question. Dear Steve, I want to take money out of my old 401k and move it to a new IRA. What is this process and will I lose my tax deferment in doing so? I love your show. Myra G., North Little Rock. Myra, great question. Hit the clock. Myra, an excellent question. It's called a rollover. You roll it from a 401k to an IRA, non-taxable event. And it's very simple to do. Go to your old company, go to the HR department, the human resource department, and say, I want rollover paperwork for my 401k. They'll give that to you, bring it in, and we or another advisor can help you fill that out and send it off to them, and it's done. It's rollover into your IRA, and then we decide what investments need to go into that. And now you've got somebody watching it for you a whole lot better. Mr. Kiefer, my job may be terminated in the near future, and I'm thinking of retiring at that time. I have what I would call a good amount in my 401k, but I'm several years from 62 to get my Social Security. My question is, what advice can help me determine if I can retire or not? Thank you, Susan P. from Maumelle. Hit the clock. Susan, good question. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take every expense that you have, from car insurance to house payment, add it all up, divide it by 12, and find out what it takes per month to live. Let's say it's $4,000 a month. If the money you saved up times 4% will equal or exceed that amount of cost, you can retire. If it takes more than 4% to do it, you're going to have to find another job because you're going to be using up too much of your money. The key is 4%. Don't forget that. Mr. Kiefer, I need to take my money out of an old 401k. What penalties may there be for me? I'm 43 years old. Sincerely, Greg L. from Cabot. Greg, if you are not buying a new house or you're not paying for medical bills, you're going to be hit with at least a 10% penalty for taking this money out. Plus, you're going to be taxed for it. Now, that 10% penalty, Greg, is not a tax. It's a penalty. That means if you have $10,000, $1,000 of that 10% is going to go to a penalty, and you'll never, ever, ever get it back. So make sure that's what you want to do before you do it, because the penalty goes away. It never comes back. The tax you might get back, but the penalty is gone forever. I urge you to look for another alternative. Robert, Tell them how they can send us these fantastic emails so we can read them on the show.
If you have an investment question or comment you would like answered on air, send those emails to rapidfire@youmeandwallstreet.com.
Folks, welcome back as we continue our discussion of the Investor's Survival Guide. So this next segment, we're going to talk about being unprepared. And what I mean by this is not being taken by surprise, but not recognizing opportunities when they present themselves. And we're going to give you some factual, historical events that occurred that cost people entire fortunes. Folks, I don't want you to miss out on a fortune. If you have the opportunity, if you have the right guidance, if you have the right navigator, if you have the right perseverance, you can quite possibly find the fortune you've been seeking in your life. And remember, fortune doesn't always mean money, but it has a big part to do with that. So let's look at our next story, and the title is Unprepared. Despite all the fabulous stories that drew thousands of 49ers to California, the vast majority were barely able to find enough gold just to cover their immediate expenses of food and lodging. And part of the reason for this lack of success was that miners were quick to abandon one claim, even a pretty good one, for the supposedly easy pickings of another. It seems that rumor always pointed to gold in the next creek over or a few miles north or south. According to Howard Gardner, he and three friends twice left claims for new ones, only to discover that others who mined their previous claims had struck it rich. Folks, you can see from our story that these misguided miners thought that jumping around looking for the next best thing would pay off, when in reality, if they'd have just stayed put, they'd have hit their fortunes. Imagine that. Just stay with what you're doing, and these miners would have made their fortunes. And instead, they move on, and someone comes in from behind and finishes the work. The first miners probably did the hardest work, getting through all the rock and dirt. These second miners come in and have a little bit of work to do, and boom, they hit the mother lode. Let me show you the effect of that with investing and how you can avoid that. So I'm going to take a 30-year period from 1977 to 2007. And we're going to use an index. Now, it doesn't really matter which index this is. That's not the point. The point is being prepared and sticking with your plan. Now, if you bought into one of these indexes and you stayed in that index for 30 years, you made 12.8% return per year for 30 years. Now let me ask you a question. Do you think that index made 12.8% every year? Of course not. There were times when this index was down, may have been down by double digits, and it may have been up by double digits. But the fact is, staying in one place, staying in that same mine and working it resulted in almost a 13% return for 30 years. Now, let's look at what we call the rest of the story. If you missed out on 10 of the best days in the market from this index, your income dropped to 10.8%. You lost 2% a year. Folks, don't discount that. That's 2% loss times 30, not counting compounding. So imagine the loss